Joining us now, thrilled he's with us, my friend Governor Haley Barbour from the great state of Mississippi. Governor Barbour, how are you?
Hey, Laura, I'm great. Thank you for having me on your show.
From what I'm hearing, Republicans are already taking the weapon of failing to vote for the increase in the debt ceiling off the table, meaning that Obama already knows he has Republicans over a barrel because John Boehner has telegraphed that there's no way the Republicans would ever not vote to increase the debt ceiling. Do you think that's a proper approach to negotiations? I can tell you what the Tea Party and independents out there are thinking. They're thinking, you got to jolt this system. And we're taking too many weapons off the table from the very beginning, Governor Barbour.
I think that we should take nothing off the table. I hope that we can extend the debt ceiling with the right kind of savings and changes, reforms in entitlement spending, with every part of the federal government taking cuts, because there's no part of the federal government that can't afford to take cuts. And this is our point of maximum leverage to get not only cuts put into the budget for this coming year, but to structure those cuts where they go on for a decade at least. But you can't do that if you take it off the table. At the end of the day, I hope the Democrats will come to their senses and they will agree to the kinds of reforms Paul Ryan's asked for. And we don't have a debt ceiling crisis. That we are able to pay our debt. But I wouldn't take anything off the table.
Well, the problem is, of course, is you heard the president's speech, and I would love to have been in the room with you when you were watching this thing or watching snippets of it, however you watched it. And on Wednesday, he repaid the Republicans and John Boehner for agreeing to what I think was a pig in a poke with this deal. He repaid them by staring down Boehner, staring down Ryan, insulting them while they were in the room, and then going out and trotting out to Chicago yesterday, talking about, look, I'm protecting these programs. These programs aren't going to be cut back and old people thrown in the streets and autistic children not getting their treatment because these Republicans want to do that. So knowing what he said, how can we think that there was any real possibility of true reform that's needed?
That just means we ought to dig in deeper, that we ought to play harder ball and say, we thought you had the right attitude about that. You have proven to us that you do not. So we're not going to take anything for granted. We're not going to give you anything on the debt ceiling until we have hard agreements in writing, agreed to in advance, that we're not only going to make the savings, that we're going to have mechanisms to enforce the savings. But I have to tell you, Laura, too little reporting has been done about what I thought was the most offensive thing the president did. And that wasn't insult the Republicans. What he got up and said was, every penny in the American economy belongs to the government. Here's what he said. There's nothing serious about a plan that claims to reduce the deficit by spending $1 billion on tax cuts, $1 trillion on tax cuts. Now, there's a blatant statement. I believe all the money the government's entitled to. And if we give you a tax cut, Mr. Taxpayer, that's government spending. That's government giving you. That's not the government's money. It's the person that owns the money. It's that earned the money. It's his or her money. And they have a right to keep more of what they work for and earn, yet the president stands up and with a straight face says this is the government's money, and if we let you keep some of it, that amounts to spending. Good Lord, what country are we in?
If you get in this race, do you think that you have a deep Southern accent? I happen to love the accent, but you have a deep Southern accent, Mississippi, big guy, going up against this, the Barack Obama, Mr. Change. You think that could really be successful, and given what they've done to people from the South and the vilification of people from the South?
Laura, I think the American people are looking for plain-spoken common sense. Somebody that trusts the people enough to tell them the truth. I think the American people are sick of happy talk. They're sick of finishing what we started. I could remember Secretary Chu, the Secretary of Energy, said in 2008 that he thought what we needed to do get the price of gasoline up to what it is in Europe, $8 or $9 a gallon. Maybe the president says we've only got it up to $4.50. Let us stay so we can get it up to $8 or $9 a gallon like we talked about in 2008. Well, that may be finishing the agenda for what they need in Berkeley, but it isn't for Biloxi, I can tell you that. I think the campaign's got to be about issues and about public policy, because the president's wrong on public policy, and the average American knows it, and everything else is a ruse to take the subject away from what's really important. So I don't think what people's accents look like. I think people are not worried about what's in, how big the person's waist is. They're worried about how big his brain is. They're worried about whether he's got the political courage to tell the truth about the problems and do something about it. President Obama has said time and time again publicly, our entitlement spending is unsustainable. Yet he proposes to do nothing about it. They want a president that says our entitlement spending is unsustainable, and here's what we need to do so that you can have Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security.
Well, they're going to, they try to
grandchildren can have it.
They try to reframe. They're trying to reframe the debate.
I don't have the political guts to step up to the plate.
Yeah, of course they try to reframe the debate. It's going to throw old people into the street. I mean, it's the same old tired rhetoric. A couple of issues that I want to get into with you, Governor Barbour, that I think you and President Obama might agree on. Maybe the peaceful rise of China, is that good for America?
Well, I think it is. Let me put it this way. I think it can be. China is a huge country. They are modernizing, going to modernize. They're going to become a bigger player in the world. We need to be prepared for them to be our adversary in the Pacific. But we also need to be prepared to have strong commercial relationships, and for those commercial relationships to overcome any ambition that they might have to create a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere like the Japanese tried to do in the 30s and 40s.
How's it working out for us so far?
Well, the Chinese, the biggest issue we have with them is that often what they say they will do in their agreements doesn't turn out to be what they actually do.
Yeah.
And in a country like ours, based on the rule of law, we should make agreements with people, and when they don't abide by their end of the agreement, then we need to take appropriate action, punitive action. That's what stops bad behavior. I mean, whether it's any other bad behavior, we try to deter it, we try to stop it, we try to punish it.
What about Trump's 25% tariff idea?
Whether you want China to become a great rising power in Asia or whether you don't want it, it's going to happen. And the question is, how do we deal with it?
Well, we're helping it happen, are we not?
Both sides. You have to be prepared militarily.
Right. Well, we've helped it happen, though. I mean, we clearly have helped fuel the rise of China because of the way the trade deficit has gone. But what about Trump's 25% tariff on all these Chinese goods coming into the country until they stop pirating our goods, manipulating their currency, and subsidizing their state companies, which also sends the whole thing off into a situation of imbalance?
You get into details there where, we maybe don't have clean hands on subsidizing and that sort of stuff. But the point is, when the Chinese make an agreement to do something, they don't abide by the agreement, then we need to take appropriate action against them.
What about
There's no question.
Yeah.
When they do something we don't like, but they haven't agreed not to do it, that doesn't give you the right to go back and take punitive action unless they agreed to do something different from what they did.
And we only have about 45 seconds left, Governor Barbour, but also your lobbying group, and I know you didn't do personal work on this, but your lobbying group used to do work for Mexico, and Mexico obviously would prefer to have more of a comprehensive immigration reform in the United States, and some people call it amnesty, some people call it other things, but on that issue, where do you stand? Because I would say the elites in the Republican Party are not where conservative centrists are on this issue.
Well, the first thing we have to do about immigration, illegal immigration, close the border. There's nothing else to talk about until we have a border that is closed and controlled. Control won't be perfect, but that is the starting place. You can't talk about a guest worker program. You can't talk
what comes second?
Which I think we will need in our country. You can't talk about those sorts of things until you control the border, because nobody in Congress in their right mind is going to vote to do anything until you do that, and that is frankly why the Obama administration isn't trying to close the border, because they don't want the issue to go away.
When he said yesterday, Governor Barbour, that he's going to absolutely campaign on comprehensive immigration reform, that's going to be a big issue for him in this campaign. When are you going to announce, Governor?
Well, I'm going to make a decision by the end of the month, Laura, and I will announce as soon as I make the decision. I'm not one of these guys who's been planning to run for president all my life. But when I make a decision, I will announce it very quickly.
Fantastic. Governor Barbour, we really appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us.